So why design now? I've talked a lot about our perspective on design practice and where that's going. Talked a little bit about some of the things that are happening, and specifically this project that we've been working on, how we go about this and to deliver public services. Back to our low touch economy report from Board of Innovation. The writers of the research would proffer that there's real opportunity, and this little 2x2 is kind of a nice way to sort of think about where you might go to exploit that opportunity, and what specifically you might do in terms of whether it's enhancing or changing current offerings, or whether you move up into this kind of top right quadrant here and jump into this white space opportunity. And we can see examples of that, in various different markets. So here you've got in this sort of bottom curve, you've got an opportunity to sort of innovate in your core organization, where you're keeping your existing offering and you're keeping your existing clients. As you move up here, you might be thinking about how do you deploy your existing offering into a new market, or indeed how do you work with your existing clients but find a new offering to kind of bolt on, or indeed move up here. And ideally you'll start to kind of innovate and adopt this approach that will kind of take you into this white space. And I think if there's one really positive thing to come from this, I think we've all been forced to change. We've all been forced to think creatively. Design thinking is really a kind of a process to kind of help you navigate that change that we all need to make. And if we can adopt that process and somehow industrialize that, codify it, productize it, make it part of how we run our businesses day to day, it will deliver a sort of long-term return. It will deliver value over the long term, not just in response to the recovery. A really good reference that's worth looking at is by this lady Lou Downe, who's the previous head of government digital services. So we mentioned Martha Lane Fox and .gov.uk. And I'm mentioning the UK government because it's for some it might be sort of an unlikely place to go to look and learn about innovation, but it's so visible. And the way they are sort of going about transforming public services across England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland has been really inspiring and amazing. It's worth looking into. Lou Downe published this blog post at the beginning of the pandemic called 10 Principles for Designing Crisis. And again, you think this is somebody who's worked in sort of digital services in the UK government. But these principles, I think, are really valuable and will resonate with any business. Primo non cherry. First, do no harm. Number two, speak the truth. Be clear and actionable. When we're delivering services, let's really think about what it is that we need people to do. And obviously, she's talking here about how to develop services in a pandemic. But I think what struck me is how valid these are. Again, I'm going to skip through clock watching, and the slides will be available if you want to dig in on this stuff. So just to conclude, what can we do? So what's the point in all of this? What can I do in my business that's going to be different? How do I apply some of this design stuff to help us recover, to help us progress, to help us get to where we're going? And the 5 things which I can just talk about very briefly are: number 1, start with empathy. We talked a little bit about empathy, what that means. Ask yourself, how might we? Number 2. Number 3, dive into digital tools. Don't hesitate. No better time. We've already been, we're kind of suffering from an overuse of Zoom calls and Google Meet or whatever your poison is. Number 4, cultivate an experimental mindset. Talk a bit about that. And number 5, optimize your team. Do you have the right team? Do you have the right team structure? Are you have the right people in the right seats on the bus? So first of all, start with empathy. What do we mean there? Have you spoken to your customers lately? Have you spoken to your best customers lately? We see time and time again within our sort of design training aspect of our business, we work with startups, and we deliver programs for startups with people like Catalyst. We always find the companies that are succeeding, that are doing really, really well, have really cracked this code of talking regularly to the customers. And at scale, enterprises, you'll have whole teams deployed whose job it is to always be carrying out user research, to always really find a kind of a more nuanced, in-depth perspective on how their products are being used and what are the other things going on in the lives of customers and users that would help us kind of shape new versions of our products and services that will help us think differently and more broadly about how we deliver value. So have you spoken to your customers lately? How well do you really understand what they need as it relates to your offering? And do you have any artifacts? Have you actually kind of set that up in any meaningful way? I mean, have you ever created a kind of a customer persona, a representation of a group of a cohort of customers? Have you used empathy maps before? Do you typically storyboard or kind of map out how you're going to deliver a service before you do that? And just to give you an example, this is a piece of work that was developed by a chap called Nick Sung, who found himself working for Airbnb, having previously been employed as an animator at Pixar. Airbnb is a really interesting example, and they're in the sort of the very much an experience economy company, who don't have any stock, who don't have any property, who don't have a tangible offering, but are really sort of harnessing this kind of gig economy sector to deliver value to customers. Really what they're selling is escapism, discovery. It's a very intangible offering. And because it's intangible, and because, again, coming back to this kind of point about technology being commoditized and experience being this differentiator, what they did was they designed a storyboard for the guest journey. Okay, so the process of a guest thinking about going on a trip, doing the research, carrying out the sort of their research to kind of find a location, find somewhere to stay, the whole process of interacting with the host, et cetera, et cetera. And they did the same thing for the host journey. They did the same thing for onboarding employees. They have adopted this process of storyboarding to really bring to life these moments and opportunities for design, these opportunities to enhance and clarify and design out those wrinkles. So this is a really sort of inspiring example of how investment in understanding your customer and their journey as it relates to your offering will help you see around corners, will help you identify those kind of moments of potential friction, and will also help you kind of really sort of learn about your product and service much more in the way that it shows up in your customers' lives. The second recommendation is to ask yourself, how might we? This is three magic little words. They're sort of quirky and a bit strange. But how might we is a little innovation tool that's used in design thinking, and it's a process that we use to generate as many different frames or versions of a problem as we can think of. And typically what we'll do is we'll think about a problem, and then we'll kind of reframe the problem using this language. How might we solve this problem? And it's framed in that way specifically because by saying how might we, it assumes that there is a solution. There's a nuanced creative solution, and that's going to come from this conversation that we're going to work together to find this. So ask yourself, what is the actual problem you're trying to solve? Are you trying to save the world from the pandemic? Are we trying to give information to the people of Northern Ireland? Or are we trying to divert individuals from bombarding phone lines so that GPs can help people with more serious conditions? Okay, so by framing the problem in that specific way, we could come up with a creative, an accurate, and a highly effective response to that problem, rather than broadly making assumptions, giving in to cognitive bias and thinking that we know our customers because we've been doing this for years and so we know everything, and actually accepting that we probably have our blinkers on for a lot of the time. And actually, if we invest in customer research and we invest in creative time together as a team to explore the problem using a wider lens, we might get to opportunities for innovation. So frame your problem by turning it into a question. This is a little article which was also published on Think with Google. So it's a senior design practitioner in Google talking about how design thinking can teach us to work better in teams during the pandemic. And it specifically talks about using how might we questions in group situations. So that link is there for you also. Thought that was really useful. Third one, really quickly, is to dive into digital tools. I read this wonderful report on it from Accenture where they talked about, the pandemic being a kind of a mass acceleration of a 20-year trend. A lot of this technology that we're using now has been around forever. Virtual whiteboards and video conferencing. So jump into it. Virtual meetings, whiteboards, collaborative design tools. We have noticed a hike in productivity during this time, believe it or not. And moving from a world where we were constantly kind of whiteboarding everything and using little bits of paper and sticky notes and kind of markers. I don't know if we're ever going to get back to that. I think we'll get back to some version of that, but we've been using great tools like Mural and Miro for virtual whiteboarding and collaboration with our clients, with users and customers when we're kind of testing hypotheses and kind of design solutions. It's been really, really productive, and it's kind of forced a bit of a change in how we work. So I'd really encourage everybody, assuming we're all sort of digital natives, but I really encourage people to kind of try new things and to kind of look for tools that will help them. And this is just one example of some of the flows and whiteboarding that we've been doing with the Department of Health, where we have kind of a range of different kind of services that are all kind of detailed out with several iterations. And sometimes you might have up to sort of 20, 30, 40 people collaborating on some of these tools, using this for testing as well as kind of getting sort of expert input from our clients. Second, last one is to develop an experimental mindset. Some of you may have come across the design sprint, made famous by a chap called Jake Knapp whilst working at Google Ventures. The design sprint set out to try and redesign design thinking. Design thinking can sometimes be a sort of a long process, but really to kind of take a version of that and see how can we get to innovation within a week. So if the normal process is to develop an idea, you build it, you launch it, you learn. How do we bypass this build and launch by taking an idea and learning from it really, really quickly to kind of help us rapidly deploy new products and services. And finally, just to close, I think that we're seeing increasingly design thinking applied to team culture and team design. We can't create new products and services. We certainly can't deploy and support them if we don't have the right people in the right seats. So really thinking about taking the opportunity to kind of optimize your team. How can you reorganize to support innovation activity? Can you better define and prioritize the roles of the people working in your team, and do so in a way that give people an opportunity to progress? And how might these new tools, digital tools, and this new way of working fit into that in order to kind of optimize your current team?